Welcome to Off the Clock, News 8 Now Sports' draft recap extravaganza for the Packers and Vikings through the first couple days of the draft. I'm Ken Kozorowski. That's Alec Giannakopoulos. And Alex, still a whole day to go, of course, with the draft. But have what the Packers and Vikings done so far maybe aligned with what you thought they might do?
Yeah, they've drafted for needs. I mean, there were certain spots the Packers had to fill. Now, the question becomes, did they get the right guy at the right time? That we can argue to the very end. But both the Packers and Vikings, at the very least, knew what they had to get, and they went after it.
All right, let's get into these picks. We'll start in order, naturally. Starting with the Vikings. They traded back from 14th to 23 with the Jets, gave up a fourth, but also got 2 more third-round picks in the deal. And they would use 23 on one of the biggest and best left tackles in the draft, Christian Darrisaw from Virginia Tech, part of an outside zone scheme, a run-first team at Virginia Tech, but a mauler in both the run and pass game. What makes him such a good fit?
Well, you know, the only reason why he's not a top 1 or 2 tackle is because he's not a physical freak compared to the 2 guys off the board, but Darrisaw does it all. You mentioned he's run-heavy, and on a team where you have Dalvin Cook, it's a great fit. Not to mention the fact that he's quick off the line, very mobile, and does a great job feeding out defenses and getting his guys the lane he needs. I think he's an excellent pick, not only because of the value you got him for, but he was projected to go around 14. You got him at 23 with some third-round picks to boot, and he's a guy who can really make that impact come day one.
Now, Pro Football Focus had the Vikings pass blocking grade at just over 50 out of 100 points. That was 29th in the league. Vikings let Riley Reiff go, so the blindside spot looks to be Darrisaw's coming in. He tells reporters he's confident he can slide in right away and keep Kirk Cousins, quote, clean. That's going to be a big one. Now, Packers GM Brian Gutekunst said he thought about trading up and even trading down, but eventually stood firm at 29, took Georgia corner Eric Stokes. Blazing speed, not afraid to get physical on the outside. He's got a 6'1 frame. He's only played corner for 4 years of his life. He said in his presser he looks up to Jair Alexander and is intent on working on his technique. NFL draft scouting guru Andy Herman of PackerReport.com gives us the lowdown on Stokes.
Great ball skills, very physical, played in the SEC, able to, hang with some of those bigger, more physical receivers, but also able to, hang with speed on the sideline, can play zone, can play man-to-man, has potentially some ability to play in the slot, although I think he's more of a true outside corner.
The big question will be, how long does it take Stokes to slide into a prominent role? You have Kevin King returning for that second spot outside the corner after all.
That's right, and he is very similarly sized and physical as King, so the nickel fit may not be actually workable, but he did hold opposing receivers to around an 11% catch rate in traffic, so he's an absolute menace when the footwork and the positioning is there. Just a little bit more work to be done. It kind of feels like this is a year down the line you're really going to see the benefits of this guy.
And that's kind of what Gary was like, an athlete who needs some time to mold.
Sure.
But he kind of likes that guy, so it's a pick that makes sense with who he's been drafting so far. So looking down a year of the road, for a bit for this pick perhaps, but then at number 62, the Packers take center Josh Myers of Ohio State. The Athletic's Dane Brugler had Myers listed at the 63rd best prospect. Packers grab him at 62.
Pretty good value. Myers is a first-team All-Big Ten center who was also a Remington finalist. He could slide right into Corey Linsley's vacant spot on that line, and the dude's an absolute warrior. He injured his left foot late in the Big Ten title game against Northwestern. Doctors told him if he played against Clemson in the playoffs, his chance of worsening the injury and even needing surgery would skyrocket, and that's what happened. He felt a huge pop in his foot in that Clemson game, and his tendon ended up sliding right off the bone under one of his toes, and he played on it throughout that game. Yeah. So the dude's an absolute stud, I think.
I like the pick. You love the toughness. And the Vikings started out their third round with the potential quarterback of the future, Texas A&M's Kellen Mond. Mond comes into the draft with the most experience under center, 4 years, starting for the Aggies in 46 games. The QB threw nearly 10,000 yards. It's a school record.
Yeah, and then they drafted another quarterback recruit, North Carolina's Chaz Surratt. Surratt came to North Carolina as a QB recruit before being reassigned to the linebacker position. He's taken well to it. Scouts say he's still kind of learning, but his knowledge of how quarterbacks operate's definitely given him an advantage to show what he can do at the position.
The Packers then traded up for a weapon, Amari Rogers, Trevor Lawrence's favorite weapon. Rogers tallied over 2,100 yards in Clemson. There's been a lot of demand for a wide receiver, and the Packers heard it. They traded up in the third round with the Titans.
So they've got another A-Rod on the roster. And there's some more help on the line for the Vikings. They went with Wyatt Davis. They took a guard late in that third round, another Ohio State guy. Ohio State was very busy on day 2. He's known for his power, only allowing 3 sacks in 2020. Longtime Packers fans may recognize the last name. He's the grandson of Packers Hall of Famer Willie Davis back in the 1960s. You see him there.
And you saw him a little bit earlier. The Vikings finished their third round with Pitt defensive end, not quite the fastest off the line, an interesting size at 6'4" and 260, but a first-team All-ACC guy, 9 sacks this past season to lead the conference. Vikings need an edge rusher opposite Danielle Hunter, so once again, feeling a need.
All right, let's give some love to Alex Bears, too. We have to, because as a Packers guy, I'm ready to say they hit 2 home runs with their first 2 picks of the draft, both of which they had to trade up for. Justin Fields, Ohio State quarterback, he'll learn behind Andy Dalton, of course, for this season. I would assume it's a one-and-done kind of year. Justin Fields is pretty good thrower of the football, so I don't see Andy Dalton sticking around too much, but I assume you have to love that you've got a quarterback of the future you can be excited about.
Yeah, it's a weird spot to be in. You know, I normally associate, as a Bears fan, draft time with pain and
Suffering,
questions
absolutely.
and just misery. But these first 2 picks are home runs.
Yeah,
You
how about
already-
this guy, Tevin Jenkins?
Man, I love Tevin Jenkins. Not only is he a mauler, but he has this hate energy he brings to the field. He really wants to send the D-back or the defender into the dirt. You gotta love it. What a steal at 39, even though they had to pay a little bit to trade up for him.
Yeah, he was mocked as the Bears' first-round pick,
Yeah.
so getting him at 39 in the second round looks to be an absolute steal. So let's look ahead where the Packers are. 6 more picks to go tomorrow, maybe a running back to fill out the depth chart now that Jamal Williams is gone. Defensive line perhaps as well. Guys like Dean Lowry just haven't really cut it for the Packers on that defensive line. And how about the Vikings looking ahead tomorrow?
Yeah, 6 more for the Vikings as well, including 3 in the 4th round. The biggest needs covered so far. Will be interesting to see what happens.
There's a lot of question marks. I mean, how will Kirk Cousins handle the drafting of his successor? Interesting picks between both teams. Do you have a favorite so far between the Packers and the Vikings?
You know, we mentioned it. I think I have to go with Darrisaw. I really love the value you get pulling in 2/3 along with the guy that's going to start day one. You mentioned how big that need was, and I think a thing we're going to debate about with the Packers and Vikings is they've addressed their needs, but did they get the right guy at the right time? Were there other corners they could have gotten in the second round? Other linemen? You know, I think the biggest need for the Vikings was the line. They addressed that need right away, and they got some extra value with it. So they've been doing a good job in these last few drafts, and that first round was no difference.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see what the Vikings have done. You kind of see a mix of both drafting for need now and making sure the depth is there. A linebacker, Anthony Barr, has dealt with injury issues. You get a guy like Chaz in there. But honestly, I think you're looking at 2 starters on the offensive line right now.
Right.
Fantastic stuff.
And you still get Kellen Mond in case he pans out. I mean, that's a very low-risk, high-reward move late in the 3rd round to get a guy that could potentially solve your biggest question at quarterback.
Yeah, and of course the cornerback position for the Packers, Kevin King, Shandon Sullivan, Josh Jackson, all those guys on 1-year contracts. So to have some guys who are going to be around for a couple of years alongside Jair Alexander, the sky hopes to be the limit for a guy like Eric Stokes. Well, that's going to do it for us on Off the Clock. Thanks so much for joining us. For Alec Giannakopoulos, I'm Ken Kozorowski. Day 3 of the draft begins 11 a.m. Saturday. Thanks for catching us off the clock.